The newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. Findings from a new COVID-19 antibody research in the Philippines are set to be released by year end. Let's talk more about this with Dr. Jaime Montoya. He is Executive Director of the DOST's Council for Health Research and Development. Dr. Montoya, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Risa, and good afternoon to all of your viewers and listeners.
Doc Montoya, can you explain to us further what the study seeks to find out and, of course, how beneficial it will be for our COVID-19 response?
Yeah, we are funding the what we call the zero prevalence studies, which is really as studies to actually determine the level of protection in communities in the Philippines, different communities in the Philippines. It is by looking at their level of antibodies. So we're going to look at whether they're immune or protected, and how the vaccination programs are currently going on, actually bringing us to that level of immunity. So it could be a very good basis or gauge or guide for government agencies, and especially our Department of Health, to determine whether we're actually able to reach what we call the population protection that we are aiming for, that will actually arrest or slow down the circulation of this virus if we attain that particular threshold of immune individuals or protected individuals in the Philippines with sufficient antibodies.
Doc, how about on other studies? Can you also give us updates, such as perhaps the one that explores virgin coconut oil as an adjunctive therapy?
Yeah, we are actually looking at some of the repurposed drugs because that is the fastest way. Rather than starting from scratch, we are looking at repurposed drugs, meaning drugs that already been approved by the FDA for specific indications. And now we're looking for their use in COVID-19. And we're looking at Lagundi, Tawa-Tawa, and of course, VCO. The Lagundi and VCO trials are already finished, and they're now in the data analysis part. While Tawa-Tawa is still proceeding, they have not finished the recruitment of volunteers for the trials. So once the results are out, we can actually determine whether they can really help alleviate the symptoms of patients with COVID-19 or to prevent their progressing to severe forms or complications.
Doc Jaime, let's talk about ivermectin. Some netizens are questioning the need for, or rather to launch clinical trials for the use of, again, ivermectin, an antiparasitic drug. What are your thoughts?
The current information that we have is that even if you, based on the advisory of the World Health Organization, we do not have sufficient evidence as of now to actually say that it works or it does not work. So because of that particular insufficiency of evidence, then we have to generate the evidence, particularly on how Filipinos will respond to this particular drug, or what side effects, or is it actually completely safe with the dosage that will be used. Because we cannot actually just assume that just because being used by other countries, it can be suited to the Filipino population, because we can react differently. And based on our, because we're monitoring the developments of the trials being done abroad, as you probably have heard, some of the studies have actually been pulled out from publication because of questions on data fabrication and manipulation of the data. And that has affected, pushed back the advances of many of the studies. That's why all the more that we have to really do this particular trial, so that once and for all, we can answer the question based on science, whether it's going to be useful and whether it can be used by Filipinos for COVID-19.
Doc Jaime, would also like to get your opinion on booster shots. Studies on booster shots and perhaps the possibility of local vaccine manufacturing. Are there any updates that we have here?
Well, boosters, whether we're going to give boosters to those who have already been vaccinated as a third dose, that has already been evaluated by the All Experts Group, and of course also of the Department of Health and the IATF. And our current thinking is that this is not the right time for us to discuss or even make this available, because our priority is really to immunize or vaccinate all Filipinos or majority of Filipinos rather than vaccinating or giving an additional dose to those already vaccinated. Although there was some suggestion that maybe for some specific groups like severely immunocompromised patients, this may be given, but that is really a more of a judgment call. But generally speaking, our priority would still be to vaccinate as many Filipinos as possible, and maybe we can make boosters available when the global vaccine supply stabilizes and we have sufficient vaccine supplies in the Philippines. And I think you have another question.
Yes, Doc, I was going to ask about the challenges so far in conducting these studies. And again, of course, the possibility of us to be able to manufacture a locally produced vaccine.
Okay, for the local vaccine manufacturing capacity, that is a priority. And you know, for the past few months, that has been negotiations been going on with local companies to partner with foreign companies to make these vaccines available and manufactured, or at least packaged in the Philippines. And that is being facilitated by many agencies like the Department of Trade and Industry, DOST, even by the DOH, to make this possible with the support, of course, of the Food and Drug Administration as well. So we need to have to put into place incentives to encourage these local companies to really go into manufacturing of vaccines. For the challenges, of course, the challenges is, you know, especially for the clinical trials, because we want to recruit patients or volunteers. The lockdowns, the quarantines has actually affected mobility and therefore has affected our recruitment of volunteers. So, but we have no choice. We just have to go with what is existing. So we just maximize the campaigns and the information campaigns that we do for possible volunteers. But that is the biggest challenge really, is the lockdowns, the quarantines have restricted mobility and made it difficult for us to have the patients participate in the trials.
Well, Doc Jaime, maraming salamat. Thank you very much for sharing with us your insights and your time. That's Dr. Jaime Montoya.
Thank you very much, Risa, and thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone.
The United States is set to begin the offering of booster shots. So, are booster shots necessary, and what protection can they offer, especially against the Delta variant? More in this Bloomberg report.
It's not only boosted, meaning that your immunity in the immediate time frame is higher and stronger than it was pre-boost, but there's a lot of data that suggests that that booster shot will also improve your memory responses, meaning that your immune system will improve the number of cells that are present that will then be able to respond to a future exposure to the virus and therefore make you even better protected against infection. So booster principles there are the same way. The benefit is going to be for immediate protection, but also for longer-term protection.
Can we basically come to the conclusion that the vaccines as they are now are not sufficient to block out the Delta variant when you see a place like Vermont with such a high vaccination rate, seeing cases go up at such a dramatic pace?
I think vaccines need to do two things. First and foremost, they need to protect against hospitalization, severe disease, death. And the vaccines in the U.S. are doing that even against the Delta variant. We're seeing increases in the amount of breakthrough cases that are symptomatic in vaccinated people, but we have to put that in context. The vaccine is still providing great amounts of protection against infection, and this surge in cases is really being driven by unvaccinated people here in the U.S. Now, that's not to minimize the fact that Delta is a much more aggressive variant than any previous ones, and it's challenging our vaccines in a way that we really didn't think was possible a few months ago. So Delta is stronger. It's making inroads into the vaccinated population, but the vaccines are still holding up.
Now, this just in, the health department reports over 18,500 new COVID-19 cases. This has brought the country's total cases to 1,954,000, around 143,000 of which are active cases. At least 101 new fatalities were also recorded overnight, pushing the death toll to over 33,100. On the other hand, total recoveries have reached 1,777,000, with nearly 18,000 new survivors. Out of the 66,225 total tests conducted, 27.9% yielded positive results. Hospicio de San Jose Orphanage in Manila is calling for cash donations as around 130 residents of the orphanage, including its personnel, tested positive for COVID-19. Earlier today, around 30 COVID-19 patients from Hospicio were transferred to the Philippine Red Cross Isolation Facility in Adamson University, most of whom are senior citizens. Other residents of the orphanage, including its staff, will undergo confirmatory swab tests after exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms. With this, Hospicio de San Jose is calling for cash donations to assist the residents. Those who are interested may call the number being flashed on your screen. Meanwhile, COMELEC is urging all those who are qualified to vote in the 2022 polls to now register a little over a month before it closes. Faith Del Mundo with the details.
Qualified voters have 32 days left to register for the 2022 elections. According to Attorney Eliza Savile David of COMELEC, around 1.3 million residents of Mindanao have registered to vote despite quarantine restrictions.
Voter registration, well, I am confident and happy to say that Mindanao is performing well. Right now, a total of newly registered voters for all the islands, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We have, again, to be exact, 4,744,950. This is as of July 2021.
Meanwhile, newly registered voters have now reached over 4.7 million, more than COMELEC's goal of 4 million. COMELEC reminds the public that registration is open only until September 30. For senior citizens and persons with disabilities, COMELEC has launched an online renewal program. Meanwhile, on September 11, COMELEC is planning to have a synchronized registration in SM Ayala and Robinson's malls. And to encourage more people to register to vote, registration hours have been extended to until 7 p.m. from the previous 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. schedule. COMELEC calls on all eligible youths to register and urge all their friends to register too.
Because registering and voting wisely is the first step. And remember that our vote counts. So, yun.
They are also calling on mothers to persuade their children to register. And COMELEC assures the public that they are taking proper health measures to ensure the public's safety when in line for voter registration. COMELEC is now also using social media to urge people to register, as well as partnerships with other government and private organizations. For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
Let's now take a quick look at the other top stories today. The National Police vows justice for a quarantine violator who was allegedly sexually abused at a police-manned quarantine checkpoint in Mariveles, Bataan. PNP Chief Guillermo Eleazar said Police Patrolman Elmer Tuazon Jr. has been placed under restrictive custody and ordered to respond to the allegation against him. Eleazar assured that PNP would investigate the case and permanently remove the patrolman from service once found guilty. President Duterte and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, renewed their commitment to further boost the relations between the Philippines and China. Duterte emphasized the need for enhanced economic cooperation to hasten post-pandemic recovery. Xi, meanwhile, assured Duterte that China will continue to foster a principled friendship with the Philippines, as well as strengthen the two countries' comprehensive partnership. And in sports, Ernie Gawilan has qualified to the medal rounds of the men's 400-meter freestyle S7. Gawilan, who fell just one place short of the final in the 200-meter individual medley, finished sixth out of 9 swimmers to move on to the next round with a time of 4 minutes and 58.58 seconds. Gawilan is set to compete in the finals later this evening. Now, for more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World Online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account now, www.signalplay.com, and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.